Only 17% battery. Let's get this done. Hello, creeps. Andy here. Today let's talk horror Christmas movies. Merry Christmas if you don't celebrate Christmas. Happy holidays. I have my Die Hard sweater on and I am ready to go. So this year I wanted to do a video about horror Christmas movies, and I thought I'll watch every horror Christmas movie ever made and then pick out my best. I know, but instead, because this month has just been not a great month, if I'm completely honest, I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna watch a bunch of Christmas horror movies and then I'm just gonna rank them on a scale of 1 to 5. So that's what you have here. There's only a few, 5 of them to be exact, but I still thought it would be a fun video to make. I know I should have done it earlier and not the day of Christmas, but that's okay. We're just gonna skip on past that. Okay, so let's start. These are in no particular order. However, my favorite is last. So first, let's start with Krampus, and I'm going to give them Santa hats. So out of 5 Santa hats. So first, let's start with Krampus. So Krampus is a 2015, if I'm not mistaken, horror film, and it's about Krampus, which is the German version of, I don't know if he's Santa Claus or Santa's like evil twin kind of thing, because I think like if you're good, Santa will come, but if you're bad, Krampus comes. I could be mistaken, but he like drags children away if they're bad. He's terrifying. This movie is about Krampus coming, but the reason why Krampus comes is because this town has kind of lost the holiday spirit. So you can definitely see that in the very beginning. The opening scene of the film is just fantastic. I think it perfectly depicts the holidays, at least here in the States, where everyone's just running around and pushing each other around and pissed off and irritated, and they get to have to spend time with their family and they're not happy about it. I think it just kind of sums up the holiday season. As much as we say that it's about, you know, spending time with family, a lot of it is just like stress and irritation. So the movie itself is about, you know, the true meaning of Christmas and to be thankful for what you have. But because this little boy who we follow throughout the film, he loses his trust in Santa, he ends up ripping up his letter to Santa and throwing it out the window. And because he lets the Christmas spirit die, and it seems that the town has done so too, Krampus comes and he brings a whole lot of horror toys into the equation as well. Jack in the Boxes, gingerbread cookies, teddy bears, just things that can murder humans. It's a really good movie. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was so well done. I watched it in theaters when it came out and I was like, this is a good movie, and every single year I've watched it. So this is definitely one that I watch every single year. It is so fun. That's another thing too, is like, these are not the only horror Christmas movies I've seen, but I didn't want to do movies that I've seen before but that aren't fresh in my mind. So that's why I'm only doing these 5, just to clarify. But Krampus is just fantastic. I really love the mask, the costumes that they use. I feel like the family doesn't make any traditional horror movie stupid mistakes where the killer's coming at them and they trip, or you know what I mean, anything irritating. I feel like they make pretty good decisions based on what they're given. The ending is very ambiguous, and like I said, I watch this every year and I always watch it with my husband, and he and I have very different interpretations of the ending. He tends to lean more negatively and I tend to think it's a more positive ending. I think overall I would give this 4.5 Santa hats out of 5. I love this film. I think it's fantastic. So next up, let's talk about Creepshow. So Creepshow this year, 2020, released a holiday special, and it's about 45 minutes long, and you know, they use those same traditional like changing of lights to make it look like a comic book, and it's just so fun. I just love the series. So there's a man, he goes to the doctor to find that he has eaten a lot of things that he doesn't remember eating, cloth and metal and things like that, and he ends up thinking that he's some sort of werewolf. So he finds a Shapeshifters Anonymous group, like an AA group, to go to, and he finds a bunch of different shapeshifters there, well, mostly all shapeshifters. Through going there, he finds that Santa Claus is actually the arch nemesis of all shapeshifters, and so they go into this hilarious backstory about, you know, how Santa Claus teamed up with Satan, you know, so he's like Satan's Claus, which is where he got his name from, to beat these shapeshifters, why he delivers presents, why, you know, it answers a bunch of these traditional questions. It's just so silly and funny. There's a scene though where they kill about 100 mall Santas, and it's so hilarious. It's just too good. And then this evil Santa, like the big Santa at the end, comes, and his makeup is awesome, and he says something like, "I'm gonna send you to ho ho hell." There's just so many Christmas puns in this movie, and I'm just a huge fan of that. So I thought this was hilarious. It's definitely more of a dark comedy than an actual horror film. I would give it 4 out of 5 Santa hats. I could definitely see myself watching this again next year for a few laughs, but for like a serious horror movie, it would definitely rank higher. This is like, in no means take this to be a serious horror film. This is absolutely just a silly fun time. Next up, we have Christmas Evil. So this is also known as You Better Watch Out and Terror in Toyland. So this is actually a 1980s horror film, and I think, I could be mistaken, but I think this is the first horror Santa movie that was ever released, and then others came after it. So the main character gives a very disturbing performance. He's a man who grows up like really wanting to be Santa Claus, kind of like idolizing this role of Santa, and you see his mental decline throughout the film. It's definitely a slow build. You are POV of the killer. That just is creepy in itself because you get to see, like I said, his decline, but also just like the state, his mental state. It kind of reminded me of like The Stepfather, the original, where you're following him and you see what sets him off, and you see, you know, his change, and you see, you know, it's kind of like that, I would say, because you do get to know the killer more than anybody's. I really enjoy movies like that where you're kind of put in the killer's seat, because it gives you more sympathy for that person, because you see his interactions at work, you see his interactions with his family, you know, you kind of have some sympathy for him when you see him living his everyday life, as opposed to just being like this bloodthirsty maniac. He keeps books of children, the good children and the bad children, in his town, and he writes very detailed letters of like, or notes of what each child does. So like, this child is good, she shares her toys. This child is bad because he reads pornographic magazines, or whatever it is. It's definitely creepy for sure. He like spies on the kids, and yeah. But he does not harm the children at all in this film. You feel for him more emotionally because he's not going around harming children as Santa Claus. But he does, you know, eventually have a slow decline. So the makers of this film wanted him to more represent 19th century Santa Claus, who was definitely more evil and less like happy, bubbly, like what we picture Santa Claus is today. You definitely see that in imagery throughout the film, and you definitely get to witness that in him as well. The character is very complex. He's very multi-dimensional. Like I said, he loves the kids and he wants to just be around them and care for them and help them, and so you do have some sympathy for him in this film. But then he just goes and stabs random people, so it's very complex. It's definitely a slow build, and it all builds up to Christmas Eve, where he kills some people. There are a few practical effects in there that are cool. The soundtrack's really cool. But overall, it's not a gore fest by any means. It really is the story of this man, and less a story about like a Santa Claus killing spree. He always tries to fully become Santa, but he can't ever quite reach the height of that. And at the ending, I took the ending to interpret that as he feels like he has finally hit being the real Santa Claus. He finally feels like he's Santa. But there are obviously different interpretations for the ending as well. So that is that one. So out of this one, I would give this one like a 3 Santa hats out of 5. Because although it is obviously a story about a killer Santa, it's definitely less about the actions of Santa going and killing people than it is about this one person's like mental decline. So I would give it a 3 out of 5, but it's definitely a great film. I really enjoy this one. 11% battery, can we make it? Oh, okay, so this one is 3615 Père Noël. I think I'm saying that right. It's a French film. It also goes by the name Deadly Games, Game Over, or Dial Code Santa Claus. This is a 1989, like I said, French film, so it does have captions, so you do have to read if you're going to watch this one. So this one is interesting. It's basically like the horror version of Home Alone, and it actually came out before Home Alone. The makers of this film were thinking of taking legal action against the people who made Home Alone, because they are very, very similar, but I don't think they ever ended up doing that. This one, the Dial Code Santa Claus and Christmas Evil, are actually both on Shudder under the Last Drive-In Christmas special, so you can watch them there, as well as the Creepshow. So those 3 are all on Shudder. For this one, I really adore the kid in this. He's just like a very brilliant kid. But what's cool about him is that he does still represent being a child. He still calls out for his mom. He still gets lost. He still gets flustered. He still gets scared. Like, he still is very much so a child, which I like when I'm watching a child actor acting. Oh, I have 6, I just realized. Anyways, this one's kind of weird because it starts out where you're like, oh, this is definitely going to be a horror movie. You start with this man who ends up being the Santa that breaks into this little boy's house and kind of causes all this damage, and the little boy ends up trapping him and harming him and doing this and doing that. But it does definitely turn into more of an action film through the middle section. So it's like it walks a thin line on action horror. So if those are the type of movies that you're into, you'd probably really like this. But for just a full-blown horror Christmas movie, I would probably give this like a 2.5 out of 5. Because it's definitely not one that you're like, oh, it's Christmas time, I have to get in the Christmas spirit and watch this. It's not really like that. I mean, it really is Home Alone, and the only difference is the bad guy's dressed up as Santa Claus. But other than that, there's really not that much Christmas element to it, besides like the very beginning. So still a good film, and by no means is this a bad film. It was very entertaining, but it just wasn't like a traditional horror Christmas movie that I would watch every single year. Another one that I did watch really quick was Better Watch Out, and this one I think was made last year. And this was about a break-in. It starts where it's a break-in, but then the plot turns, but I don't know. I knew from the very beginning what was going to happen. It wasn't like a huge plot twist to me. I was like, oh no, it's obviously this. And so when the big plot twist happened, it happens like 15 minutes into the film, so it's really not that big of a plot twist. That movie was fun. It's about a babysitter going to babysit a young boy, and then a break-in happens and she has to kind of protect him, but then kind of things change around. I don't want to give too much away. It's definitely a fun film to watch. So funny. There's a lot of humor in it, and I would see it more as a dark comedy than an actual horror film. My issue with this one, however, was motivation of the characters. Like, there really was no motivation for this to unravel the way that it did, and I was just more confused at the end, and I was just thinking, what? So this one I would give probably a 3 out of 5, just because it's fun and entertaining, but definitely not to be taken seriously. I just don't understand how a movie could play out like this with no further detail into the psyche of the characters, the antagonist. I don't know. So that one, 3 out of 5, it was entertaining, but it was nothing super special. Last, I would like to talk about Black Christmas. So this is a 1973 horror film, the original. There are 2 remakes after it called Black Christmas. This one, we have a group of girls living at a sorority, and they are being killed off one by one over the holiday season. We are in the POV of the killer, but it's not like Christmas Evil where you get to see his psyche. You just kind of see like the creepy breathing behind the camera kind of thing, but you never know his identity. You never see him. You never understand why he's doing what he does. There's no motivation at all, and it makes it so much creepier. This one, and did I say there's no backstory? You don't get any backstory. You get nothing. Zero, zilch, but it's fantastic. And the most terrifying parts of the film, because it's not bloody at all, there is a lot of death, but you don't really get to see it. There aren't these like amazing practical effects. It's more like the camera shows him stabbing, but nothing happening underneath. You get what I'm saying. So it's not like it's a bloody movie, and that's what makes it terrifying, but just the scenes of this guy, and he calls and he says creepy things and he just makes creepy noises. It actually is a pretty terrifying film for being so old. Like, this movie holds up for sure. This is one of my hands down favorite horror Christmas movies ever, ever, ever. Although I do enjoy the son making cookies out of the mother's flesh in the remake, this one is far, far superior. And still at the end, you still don't know what happened or what it was. And you know, sometimes it's creepier to know less than to know more, you know? So I think they did a fantastic job keeping the backstory out of this. I think they did a fantastic job just like having a maniac come and kill people. I mean, sometimes things like that just happen and there is no explanation. So I thought this movie was fantastic. I know that I've seen it before, but 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 Christmas hats, absolutely. This was my favorite Christmas movie that I watched this year, and my favorite Christmas movie that I watch most years. And those are my list of movies ranked that I have watched this year. I hope you guys have a great Christmas, and I hope you watch some creepy films. Let me know your favorite down below, because I know there's a ton. Silent Night, Deadly Night, Santa's Sleigh. I know there are a lot of just winter Christmas movies that I tend to watch towards Christmas, like you know, Misery or The Thing or The Shining or what else is there? Dreamcatcher, you know, those type of movies too. So they're not necessarily Christmas movies, but they're good to get into the spirit when it's all snowy and cold outside. I mean, I live in California, it's never snowy here, but just to get into the winter mindset, it's like 70 degrees today. But leave me your absolute favorite horror Christmas movie down below. I would like to see what your favorite is. I know I didn't talk about them all this year. So I hope you guys have a great Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a great holiday, and I will see you next week. Hi guys.